Good morning. Happy Sabbath. Well, we all know that there's terrible things happening in the world these days, and we live in perilous times. And one of these days I'll get up here and put together something about current events and things of that nature, but we're all pretty well informed these days. What I like to talk about, for me, is I like to focus on heroes and people of faith that have faced these crises in the past and how they've come through them and how they've stood up to tyranny and oppression and still held on to their faith. So that's what I like to talk about. So today I'm going to talk about another hero of faith in the world. And I think a lot of you, this comes down closer to our time, so I think a lot of you may have already heard about this particular person. And if you have, just bear with me, so maybe somebody here hasn't. I really like this story. So here we go. There are many examples of man's inhumanity to man that came out of World War II that raged across the globe during the late 1930s and early 1940s, but none surpassed the horrors experienced by the Jews of Europe that were hunted down and exterminated by the Nazi war machine during those years. Of 8,300,000 Jews living in Europe, some 6 million were captured and exterminated, man, woman, and child. This horrific fact of history is known by most of us, but what may not be known is the heroism of individuals who swallowed their fear and did something to help the Jews. They feared the consequences of what they did, but they feared even more facing the future as decent people if they did not help. Acts of courage such as a widow handing her Aryan identification card to a Jewish mother, then being rounded up and marched off to the firing squad meant for the Jewess. Or the cattle dealer summarily hanged in the public square for concealing 35 Jews. Acts such as these are little noticed and dimly remembered in human history, but shine brightly in the books of heaven. In 1939, approximately 300,000 Jews lived in France. By 1940, another 40 to 50,000 refugees poured in from Belgium and Holland ahead of the advancing German war machine. It was during this maelstrom of confusion, fear, and death that John Henry Weidner came into the picture in mid-1940. Weidner, a devout Seventh-day Adventist, knew better than most the price that must be paid for liberty. He vividly remembered how his clergyman father had served a one-day sentence each week in Swiss prisons on several occasions over a period of years because his conscience told him young John should not be forced to attend state schools on the Sabbath. John's heritage and liberty extended back to his grandfather, who, as a minister of the Dutch Reformed Church, taught love as the basis of all true religion and liberty as the unquestioned right of every man. As a young man, he studied the history of Holland and how his people in the 16th century had fought against the Spanish Inquisition and its terrors, and that it was to Holland that the first pilgrims fled from England seeking religious liberty. His country had always provided refuge for oppressed and persecuted people and strongly upheld the freedoms given by God to mankind. With the heritage of liberty and the deep spiritual belief that guided his life, John Weidner could not have sat by unmoved at the scene which was beginning to unfold in southern France in 1940. Seeing the plight of the Jews pouring into the country, John decided to help in any way that he could. He prayed for guidance and courage. Then, without a real plan, set off to help. Within a short period of time, he and some of his closest friends developed a sophisticated network by which they could move refugees through the system to safety in either Switzerland or Spain. If found out and captured, the penalty without mercy would be death. The group increased rapidly, 4 to 6, then 12 members, dedicated to helping persons of all faiths or of no faith at all who were being tormented or were facing deportation from the camps in southern France to Germany or Poland. It was a hard and thankless task into which Wiedner put his entire strength and financial resources. During the first months of operation, John regularly gave 25 to 30 10-pound parcels of food each week to prisoners closest to starvation. Legal fees which paid for the valuable arguments before judges to get certain prisoners out of the camps also came from the income of his textile business. The number of people John and his group were saving grew quickly. Often after a rescue, John would ask himself if he was doing what was right in this work. We are saving people from certain death, but we are using illegal means to gain their freedom. We forge identification and travel papers. We ask guards to renounce their appointed job when they help us. We elude, falsify, evade, and outwit. As a Christian, am I doing right in this? As he wrestled with the answer, a peace came over him. I feel the hand of God leading me onward, he thought. These countless refugees need the help of a compassionate friend. They need the love of God demonstrated amid the torment and terror of this awful war. I believe the work our organization is doing will show the love that only God can give. As the war dragged on, the cat and mouse game of moving refugees to safety through the countryside of France became more and more dangerous as the Gestapo learned of the Dutch Paris network. Their business was to stop the flow of refugees to freedom by any means, and they were good at their business. John was soon to learn just how good. You are John Henry Wiedner? Yes, we are the Gestapo. You will come with us. There are questions you need to answer. But what have I done? You are under arrest. You will come with us now. Get your coat. No explanation, no charges, nothing. Just come with us or else. That was reason enough for arrest in southern France in 1943. As the Gestapo headquarters in Lyons, the frightening, time-consuming ritual began. After fingerprinting and photographs, the questions began. Where were you born? How long have you been in France? What is your religion? What is your business here? What are your political feelings? The questioning seemed endless, and the strain was increasing as the hours dragged by. We are interested in the nature of your activities over the past few months. It is known you have been helping your people, the Dutch, in their illegal movements. Tell us about this. I have helped some of my people. There are many here in southern France without income. They are starving, and I have always tried to help those in need. Blockhead! The Gestapo officer shouted angrily. Do you expect me to believe such stupid talk? You have been giving illegal aid to Jews. Don't expect me to believe your stupid lies. You are a very active man, it seems. Are you in contact with members of the underground, the resistance movement in southern France? I know a lot of French people, John said. Some of them have said they do not like the Germans. But so many have said that. It doesn't mean these people are members of the underground. You know as I do that there is discontent in the country. You are very clever in your answers, the officer said as he rose from his desk. But cleverness will not help you. Our methods are thorough. You can be assured of that. You will be sorry very soon that you have not told me the truth. After many hours of questioning, the Gestapo officers took John to the torture room. He was stripped naked, hands tied behind his back, and thrown into a tub filled with ice-cold water. A guard shoved his head down to the bottom of the tub and held there till John began to drown. Then his head was jerked out of the water. Will you answer our questions now, blockhead? No, John gasped. Slam! Down his head went to the bottom of the tub again, then jerked up at the last instant before drowning. The group in Paris, do you know about them? No. Down into the icy water again a third time. silently praying that God would give him courage and strength not to tell anything about his organization or betray his friends, even if he had to die. The torture went on like this for 3 long hours. Finally, he was pulled from the tub, taken to another room where he was slapped, kicked, and beaten. After this, he was made to kneel on what appeared to be steel rulers set on edge. The pain was excruciating as they pressed deeply into both legs just below the knees, and all while the questioning continued. It was near 3 o'clock in the morning when the torture and the questioning ended. Thrown into his cell, John prayed, "Help me, dear Lord, that my motives will be right, no matter what happens tomorrow. And if it is thy will, help me to survive this ordeal." The next day, he endured another grueling round of questioning. Then, just before nightfall, without explanation, he was let go. Hardly able to believe his ears, he thanked God as he stumbled back to his apartment. Not long after the encounter with the Gestapo in Lyons, John was on a streetcar rumbling through the streets of Nancy. Suddenly, the car stopped, and up the aisle came a contingent of German soldiers. "All men under the age of 35 will get off. Wait outside for further orders." Under 35 included John, so he got off with the others. The further orders were one word: march. They were being taken to Germany as forced laborers. Soon they were on a train speeding eastward. Escape was the only thing on John's mind. So many people were depending on him that he had to find a way to escape. Edging his way towards the door, hoping that the train would slow down as it approached the curve. Sure enough, as they approached the curve, the train slowed and he was able to leap into the darkness. The train rolled slowly away as he tumbled down the embankment. Through the night, John hiked towards freedom. When daylight came, he found shelter and slept. That night, he was hiking again. Again sleeping and resting during the day. That night, about 10 o'clock, he came upon the swift-moving Rhine River. After resting for a while, he plunged out into the waters. After about 10 minutes of struggling with the current, he was about midstream when all of a sudden he was caught in the beam of a powerful German spotlight. In a moment, another beam caught him in its glare. Then a deadly chatter rose over the rush of the water. All around him, the water began to splut and hiss in a weird symphony of sound. Machine guns, they're firing at me. Bone-tired from the fierce struggle against the rushing current, he plunged underwater and kicked for all he had toward the opposite shore. Now he was in a frantic fight to live. The water, the bullets, the lights, all combined to confuse and frighten. "God, please help me," he prayed. I think the dog ate the rest of my story. So next month, I will finish. Sorry about that. This is too good of a story to just rush through it in one day. But we still have time. We still have our liberties. And we, as a church, we have a mission that we're putting together is at the flea market. And we want to, while we still have time in this country to reach out to our fellow Americans and people, we want to be able to, we need volunteers to come to the flea market on Sundays and join us and bring the Word of God and the love of God to those around us. So with that, remember, I will finish the story next month in about 4 weeks, the third Sabbath of the month, and I think you'll be excited about it. So anyway, we need volunteers, so sign up and help us out on Sundays. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Joe. I'm sure glad I'm here on the